today's podcast, we're going to be interviewing Chris Downs of firearmslicensing.net. He's had a lifetime in the police force, firearms licensing, and now runs his own company where he helps people overcome firearms licensing issues and problems. So, Chris Downs, this is possibly the hottest podcast recording we're likely to do. We've been evicted to your lovely garden. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Highseat podcast.
Nick, thanks very much.
So, tell me about what's your background? Where have you been? Your working life?
Where have I been? My working life. The vast majority of my working life has been spent in the police. 25 years. The last 10 of those was spent in armed policing in one way, shape, or form. The last 7 of those probably spent in firearms licensing. I ran the Met Police's team for 5 years, and then for just over a year, I was at the College of Policing, where I was the national subject matter expert and wrote the Firearms Inquiry Officer course.
And that's where I met you in the first place.
That is where you met me in the first place. And you're going to hear me saying the same things.
Yeah, well, I did the deer element for the Police College's training for FEOs.
Absolutely.
So we will come to later on. So what about your shooting experience?
Okay, so being perfectly upfront, where my shooting experience comes from is going back to a boy in Norfolk. Dad had a 12 bore, as was standard at the time, and that I grew up with a little bit of rough shooting under some fairly lax supervision that I now shake my head at a little bit, but that was where it was. Rabbits, pigeons, and generally speaking, stuff for the pot. From there, I did a little bit of small bore shooting as a result of the Air Cadets. And then shooting and me kind of parted ways for a time. I was in the police. I was concentrating on work, having a young family, all the rest of those sorts of stuff that gets in the way of your fun. During my professional life, again, spending that time in armed policing. And again, to qualify that, because of the rank that I was, I didn't do an awful lot of the operational pointy end of things in terms of actually holding a firearm. My expertise around it is in command and control of those incidents, how they develop, taking in all of the information, giving an overall tactical brief and direction to the people on the ground.
Okay, so lots to do from a police point of view.
A little bit.
And then you've moved into firearms licensing.
Yeah.
And since the police, quick overview before we get into the questions about the problems we're facing, but since leaving the police, what have you been doing?
Okay, so I took a conscious decision to leave the police around about June, July 2025. I took that decision because I had been recruited into a role that I thought was there to improve the experience for everybody. And, I just didn't feel like I was being listened to. I saw an awful lot of certificate holders being disadvantaged. I saw people being treated, and don't get me wrong, there's a portion of every community that causes issues. But I saw people who were, generally speaking, the good, decent people of society being treated worse than the shoplifter that I might have picked up from Tesco's at one point in time. And I'm sorry, but that doesn't sit comfy with me. So I decided to leave the police. I became the gamekeeper turned poacher, to put a different spin on it. And I went into, I set up a website, a consulting company, an organization, both membership and digital access, around trying to put certificate holders on a firmer position when they were dealing with police. And that is what I've spent my time doing the last year. Helped well over 100 people now secure better responses, better outcomes from their firearms licensing teams. I've developed partnerships with British Deer Society and the United Kingdom Practical Shooting Association. I do their membership advice for them, and it's been a great, fantastic, eye-opening year.
Excellent. Right, so there you go. We'll go straight in. What's wrong with the system?
Okay, I'm going to answer that in a slightly different way. If we were setting out a licensing system tomorrow, right, what would be the kind of fundamental mistakes that we could make? You know, take it away for a moment from firearms licensing. Imagine we're Sainsbury's or any other supermarket chain that might be out there. We're setting out and we want a system across the UK. I'd suggest that one of the worst things that we could do is divide it down into 42 separate bits and put 42 separate people in charge of it. And then the next mistake we could make is not giving any of those 42 people some really, really clear direction about what we wanted them to do, right? And then if we wanted to get it even more wrong, we could resource it badly. Yeah, not give it enough staff to make it work. Okay, yeah, that would be a way in which we could secure it going wrong, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then what we could do on top of that is give an out-of-date, outmoded technological support in the form of a computer system that did half the job that you wanted it to do. We could give them a system that stored, records of tins of beans on the shelf, but nothing else, and then let them individual stores make up their minds as to what they were going to do with the rest of it. Okay?
Yeah. And of course, you've then got personal views
Yeah.
of each of your store managers.
Yep.
And if they don't want to stock
Beans?
beef,
Oh, yeah.
or they don't want to stock pork for another one,
Yeah.
they decide what they're going to stock and not have on board.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to stock any meat at all because they want to be vegan,
They don't have to.
it slews a very big problem, doesn't it?
So you and I, as the managing directors of this supermarket chain, could we realistically be surprised that things aren't going quite so well?
Okay, so we've got the Home Office guidance.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is what you and I, as the top directors of this supermarket we're putting out together, that's what we've put out as the guidance that all of our various stores should be using. We've given them a guidance document, which is pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, do you know what? As guidance documents goes, that's not bad, is it? It's not too bad at all. It's got some parts in it that I suspect you and I could argue about for a long time. But that is how it's going to be there. Okay, so we set out that guide. But then imagine if the instruction that we put out to them is, well, you don't have to follow that guide. You can do. This is our best practice. But if you don't, no one's going to hold you to account.
Okay.
That's pretty bleak, isn't it?
It is pretty bleak. So I actually did get I asked for various people to I asked for anybody to send in any questions they had about which I could put to you. And one of the questions that was sent in only this morning was, if you had a magic genie and you could give it a rub and have 3 wishes,
Okay.
what would those 3 wishes be?
Okay.
Let's think big picture.
Real big picture.
Real big picture.
Yeah. One person in charge and the ability to actually dictate practice. So, okay, there's two of my wishes. One person in charge, the ability to actually dictate what I want to. So I know what's going to happen. I've got the power to make that happen. And then my third wish is for to take the time to get the people that matter, the people that are actually going to deliver, to get them together and actually help them understand shooting and the community that it is. Okay. Because I've talked there about, and I've painted that quite bleakly.
Mm-hmm.
Why? There's a phrase that I've used loads. A bad system will always beat a good person. Why? This regime is full of great people who are working really, really hard, despite all of those issues that we've highlighted together. Really great people working hard. And, I describe firearms licensing to people as like doing the washing for a family of 4, right? The basket's never empty. When you've got everything through the washing machine, you've run out of space on the radiators. You don't do it right for a day. God help you catching up another time. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. But the evidence is that we've only got to go out and look. And there are some forces who are doing brilliantly. Police Scotland is probably one of the slickest operations that we've got.
Okay, so I'd look at Police Scotland. Police Scotland is an awful lot of rural area, which means the police are coming from a rural area. The guys applying for certificates are from a rural area. They understand.
Yeah.
The guys on the ground understand where we as certificate holders are coming from.
In effect, what you're talking about there is number 3 of my wishes. Them understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
And Police Scotland have also got 1 and 2. Someone's in charge and they dictate. You're all Police Scotland. Do what I ask you to do, please.
Yeah.
They deliver 98.2% of renewals on time and so on and so on and so forth. But there's also forces in England and Wales that are doing great stuff.
Go on, can you name them?
You bet I can. So if I was picking where I would live tomorrow, just purely on the efficiency of the firearms licensing team, I'd tell you go and live Avon and Somerset, Derbyshire, Thames Valley, not bad at all. Wiltshire, we, in the nicest possible way, and I'm delighted about it, we do very little business in those areas. Very, very little. Yeah, we help the process along from time to time, but these are great forces. And what sets them apart? Look at Wiltshire's Facebook page. They're out there meeting people, having a stall at the various country fairs and shows down there, and then communicating what they're doing on Facebook. Yeah. The truth of the matter is that there probably isn't a single force who's doing absolutely perfectly across the board, because life's not like that. But the effort that you can see putting people in almost directly correlates to the experience that shooters have.
So obviously you know what the next question is. Where wouldn't you live?
I wouldn't live anywhere in Beds, Cams and Hearts.
I live there.
I do know that. So,
but I'm going to be honest. I put my application in at the beginning of December. I had it back at the beginning of January.
Yeah.
For me personally, I can't fault them at all, but I have a suspicion I was very lucky, which we'll probably talk about. Right, go on then. So, Beds, Hearts and Cams, you wouldn't live there?
Yeah, remind me to talk about getting lucky. So, Beds, Cams and Hearts, I wouldn't live there. I wouldn't like to live in Humberside at the moment. they're struggling terribly in relation to their demand and managing that. Norfolk and Suffolk, again, another amalgamated firearms licensing team that is struggling at this moment. Surrey, Sussex. Surrey, Sussex are just starting to emerge on our radar as potentially being a problem for the future. But all of these things, I mean, don't get me wrong, you have to be as dull as I am to really care and read all of the documents and pull your way through the statistics. But my point always was within the police, all we got to do every month, every quarter, is find the top 3 and the bottom 3. And we need to work out what the top 3 are doing and get everybody else to do that. We need to work out what the bottom 3 are doing and get people to stop doing that and get them to do what the others are doing. It never has seemed particularly tricky to me. But I will caveat that with there's something else that we haven't touched on, in that the law itself and the statutory guidance and the Home Office guidance and the security manual, that's probably our main sources of guidance here. Now put them all together. The Firearms Act is a mishmash of amendments that have happened from 1968 onwards. It's confusing, it's contradictory in places, it's vague in others. It is far from user-friendly. Yeah? So that's really difficult. Then we've got more guidance on top of that. Statutory, Home Office, firearms security, all the rest of that. So we've got those complicating factors sitting around there. And then we've got the vast majority of the breadth of the shooting disciplines that we can be talking about. So on day one, morning one, I meet a clay pigeon shooter, then a target shooter, then an antique and historic arms collector, then an ammunition collector, then a muzzle loader, which brings into the explosives regs as well. It's not an easy subject. It's a real tricky one, particularly when police forces, by and large, I was very, very lucky because I made a case for myself that I was in a specialist role that I truly loved and that I'd invested an awful lot of time and effort in learning. A police rotation is, generally speaking, somewhere in the region of 2 years, 3 years. Well, it's 18 months to get your head around how this actually works and looks. And then to find that you're getting moved on and someone else is coming in to replace you. Again, it goes back to that thing. If we were thinking about any kind of service, what could we do that would guarantee scuppering it? And pretty much everything that we can do to scupper it is being done.
So I've also, anecdotally, because this is one of the biggest issues we have when we're trying to have a conversation about firearms licensing, for guys who are putting in the applications, they want to stay anonymous. They don't want to rock the boat because from their perspective, they're just going to lose their ticket, or it's going to become so awkward next time I have the FEO round.
Oh, yeah.
That they'd rather not say anything. However, I have heard anecdotally that Essex want to reduce their firearms holders by a third annually. Well, I suspect that's probably a bit of exaggeration, but it isn't the first time we've heard that certain chiefs of police want to get rid of firearms holders, don't want firearms in the public domains. We've got certain FEOs who I've anecdotally again heard that individual wants nothing more than to take away firearms from good people.
So there's 2 things out of that are really important, actually. One is, again, going back to our fantasy supermarket, if we wanted to ensure that we had the biggest customer satisfaction we possibly can, Well, what we could do is make it so terrifying for anybody to complain and so against their best interests. And that's the reality of the regime. People, and don't get me wrong, because I put out messages all the time via Facebook and our other social media channels about things that we've done and successes that we've had. Of course we do. But we do that so carefully. It's very, very rarely, if ever, that we finish a case and talk about it immediately. We finish a case, leave it 4, 5, 6 months, and then talk about it, and then change some of the detail and make it anonymous. And very, very rarely will we even speak about the county that it's in. We have a Trustpilot site for people that have used our services, and people are genuinely nervous about putting reviews on there. Lots of people do, and thank you very much, because it helps us get the message out. But there is genuine fear of the power imbalance between policing and certificate holders. And that is one thing that is huge. Huge. Where else what other service that you paid for would you be in a position where people ask me, "Oh, I've been waiting 18 months for my grant. Do you think I could send them a politely worded email?" What other service do you pay for where you couldn't say, "Oh, do you know what? Would you terribly awfully mind if you did the job that I paid you to do? Oh, that would be awfully kind of you, thank you."
Yeah.
And then when you send that email in, to get an auto reply that says, "We will respond to this. If it's an inquiry about how long your grant will take, don't bother us. Don't come back to us. Yeah, we won't
Customer service.
we won't be responding to
Yeah,
that."
customer service. It couldn't get better, could it?
No. And genuinely, I dealt with a county, and their certificate holder their applicant had been waiting 4 years for a grant. And when I have contacts, and I have mechanisms and levers that I can pull to make things happen. And when I spoke to the right person eventually, and I said, "Your individual's been waiting 4 years for this grant. What's going on?" They went, "Well, isn't that weird? Why didn't he tell us sooner?" He did try and tell you, but your systems make it impossible for him to tell you. So
They're not a friendly way
no.
forward.
So that's the complaint side of things, maybe. The other side to that is around people reducing guns. Now, when I was a firearms licensing manager, I thought really my job broke down into 2 bits. And I'm a simple soul. So my bit was, I got to look after public safety. Yeah, that's job number 1, public safety. Job number 2 is to deliver a service. That's all I've got to do. But yes, like you, I have seen examples of people who think it is their job to reduce the number of certificate holders that they've got out there. No, absolutely. Our tagline is supporting responsible shooting. Yeah, that's the company. Everything the company does comes from that in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Nowhere are we about giving unsuitable people guns. That's not. My personal view is that there are very few people who are unsuitable in the longer term. There are people who can't have a gun now. Yeah, absolutely. But what we do, or one of the things that we do, is that we work with people to develop a route back to shooting. And they can sometimes look like 3-5 year plans around what someone is going to do to plot their return back into shooting, in those cases where they can't have a gun, no. And we do that. But no, I have heard those same things. Yeah. I can't tell you around Essex because I simply don't know. But certainly that mentality is out there. Definitely.
Every outing begins with a decision. Every stalk teaches a lesson. Every shot carries responsibility. At Orion Wildlife Training, we believe great deer managers aren't born. They're developed through industry-leading online learning, expert practical instruction, and nationally recognized qualifications. We will prepare you for the realities of modern deer management. If you're ready to raise your standards, build your confidence, and train with people who live the job every day, visit orionwildlife.co.uk.
When it comes to either our first application or our renewal, how can we help ourselves? We've got paperwork itself, the timing, the medicals we need to do. How can we help ourselves? What's the best way of putting an application in? For the first, let's start at the first timer.
Okay. So, first timer, the best thing that you can do is get your head into this is a once in a 5-year cycle event that I'm going to have to do. It's going to take a little bit of time, and it isn't the good bit. This is not the good bit of shooting. And there is a wealth of information out there, both in the guidance notes of the application forms themselves, and there's all sorts of YouTube channels. Some give better information than others, but there is a wealth of experience out there. There's a wealth of people within the community who've got loads of experience who will help you, sit with you and talk things through. Absolutely not a problem at all. I mean, obviously the very best thing that you can do is take out a membership to firearmslicensing.net and we'll look after you from start to finish. But
Good plug.
But genuinely take your time. Have a really good look through those guidance notes at the start. They're actually not too bad. Yeah. They're fairly straightforward to understand. And I've been around people's houses, done countless assessments with people. And those bits of organisation, getting a folder, keeping your paperwork all in the same place. I say daft things to people like, get a little cheap diary and call it your shooting diary, something like that. Just a quick record of, on this day I went out and did this with this person. Then
okay, so for new applicants,
mm-hmm.
that's important that they're already starting to gain that information.
Yeah,
giving themselves that. Yeah, I've been to a clay shoot with my friends, and I'm clay shooting every other weekend using so and so shotgun, which doesn't fit me. So I want my own shotgun, which is in my view, a good reason to want it. What about firearms? Because firearms, one of the big issues is you either have to be a member of a target shooting club,
mm-hmm.
or you have to have nominated land, and then it's very much chicken and egg. Which comes first? How can you go and say, "Oh, can I come and do some deer management on your land?" to a farmer, and the farmer says, "Okay, what farms you got?" Well, I haven't got firearms yet because I need to get permission to use your land. Where do we start?
Okay, so you've come up to that chicken and egg situation. You can't get a firearms certificate without land. You can't get land without a firearms certificate. So, but there are a wealth of options out there. So, first things first, what an awful lot of people do, friends. People get into these sports and disciplines via their friends. There is a mechanism in place by which you can borrow rifles. You can start to gain your experience there. Paid stalks. you may want to make a similar plug there, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, we do paid stalks. We take people out, and yeah,
Okay.
we are quite happy to let people use our rifles to get a bit of
Okay.
experience and make them bookings. Start down that line. Actually, it's worth probably giving it a go before you even put your application in, because sounds romantic.
Not for everyone.
It's not for everyone when
No.
we actually get to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, get out and give it a go.
So again, this is just thinking about bringing all that evidence together. So I've come along with you for a paid stalk. You've watched me. You've taken, you've seen, you've imparted on me some safe handling skills. We've gone out. We've taken some shots. You have seen me. So the next top tip is, Nick, thanks very much for today. I've had a lovely day. You couldn't write me a little bit, could you? Yeah. I'm Nick Rout, professional stalker. Here's my credibility. I've been out with Chris and I have seen this. Well, already we're starting to put together a portfolio of evidence, aren't we? Yeah. Syndicate membership. Again, maybe more your area than mine, but we can go along. There are other places that offer opportunities without necessarily having to get that firearm certificate. Formal courses, DSC 1.
Yeah.
Some places offer courses about shooting over land. Those sorts of things. You can prepare your portfolio of evidence without necessarily getting yourself into that chicken and egg situation. There's three options right there.
So DSC 1,
Mm-hmm.
From my point of view as a training provider, if everybody needed to have a DSC 1, that would be great. That would be fantastic. However, there's no legal obligation that you have got to have it. I kind of get the reason why, but what's your views on people being pushed to do DSC 1s?
So it creates a difficult situation potentially. In my view, there are three levels of evidence. So if we're talking again about testimonials, just testimonials. If I've got a testimonial from another experienced shooter, that's great bit of portfolio evidence. If I have a testimonial from a professional such as yourself, that frankly is slightly better evidence. If I've done a formalized course with some kind of assessment process, that's even better. But take it away from stalking just for a moment and think about target shoot, because an awful lot more issues come up in the stalking world than target shooting world. Because you think of a target shooter, they come and present themselves to police with a probationary period under their belt, a club secretary who, generally speaking, can attest to their competence, and generally speaking, they will have done a club-orientated safe handling skills, and they'll have someone that's done that. That makes that decision-making so much easier for police. Makes it so much easier. And, I don't think you can go wrong. You can't go too far wrong with a course of some kind. Even when you're talking about, like, I used to encourage people to do a one-day shotgun skills course or a half day, those things that are offered out there. People come back from that, and I don't care how long you've been shooting, people always come away from them with a little, I didn't think about that, or well, actually that was really useful. Now, historically, I think shooting organisations have resisted that idea of mandatory training because it could be seen as the thin end of the wedge. well, why stop at DSC 1? No, you've got to do 2 and 3 in order to. So it's complicated. But honestly, again, as you might have got the hang of, I like a different analogy every now and again. If I was going to buy myself a scuba set of equipment from a car boot sale and went along to Paddy or whoever and said, will you let me join in on your dive? They'd probably quite reasonably turn around to me and say no. And I think a similar thing applies to shoot. You will. What I should quantify that with is that the number of accidents and incidents that are out there in the shooting world are minimal, negligible. They so very rarely happen. So the system of mentoring, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to call it, or however we get there, see, impractical effects of that just seem to be working. But I do think it would make everybody's life easier if there was some kind of agreed shooting over land, whether that's DSC 1 or however that looks like to go in there, because it would save so many arguments down the future. I'd be really surprised if at some point we don't speak about land assessments.
It's not
you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. So moving on. Mental health. We've made a huge amount of leaps forward with men in the countryside actually talking about problems, being able to discuss openly if they have issues, which we haven't done in the past. But over the last few years, with the deep dive into medical, the perceived let's try and get rid of firearms, people are more and more reluctant to discuss their mental health and go to their doctors, discuss it, because the moment you mention it or you get put on a certain kind of drug for back pain, all of a sudden
the knock on the door.
We're going to take away your firearms for the next 5 years, and then you can put in an application, and it's going to be a absolute ball ache getting them back. Actually, guys aren't going to go to their doctors. They're not going to discuss the problems they're having. They're not going to discuss that difficult breakup with a girlfriend or partner or wife or whatever it might be. They're just going to try and keep as low profile as possible. Got a view on that?
Yeah, I've got a very definite view on that, right? Over our lifetime, 1 in 4 of us is going to suffer at some point with their mental health. Those are the numbers, right? Men, in the nicest possible way, our age, particularly. And the very worst thing you can do is suffer in silence. There is a mechanism, a set of agreements. Please, you go onto our site. There is a free article called Speaking Up, Staying Safe. And it explains to you how a firearms licensing team should treat you in relation to that. Now, I am painfully aware that doesn't always happen. But within that, there is a leaflet that is jointly produced by the National Police Chiefs Council, Change for Mental Health, and shooting organisations. And it pains me when police don't follow their own guidance. And this is a particular area. A reaching out for help is a sign of strength. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of self-awareness, realizing that something isn't quite right. And then it's a strength for doing something about that. Now, if you're coming to me, and how I have done countless of these during my time in the police. If you are coming to me with a proactively to have a sensible discussion about how you're feeling and so on, yeah, 100% you should expect my support. Now, the caveat of that is, if you're going through some dark times, it's not always sensible to have firearms in the mix, and I don't mean it, please, that's not to put anybody off. Anybody that needs help should go to it, and they should expect the most important thing, a compassionate ear from their team, right? That's what they should be expecting. If it's sensible to take those guns away for a short period of time, what the police need to do is build a process, a system by which those guns can be returned as quickly as they were taken. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense to me, because I'm also very aware that to a lot of people, their way of coping is to go clay shooting on a Sunday morning, is to go stalking at the weekend. It's that, to some people, you take away that, and you're actually going to do their mental health so much harm.
Oh, no. Take the guns out for a minute. If I was talking to someone who was struggling and I wanted to say, what kind of things could you do positively? I'd say go and take a walk in the countryside. Go and do something that you enjoy doing with your friends. Go and do something that focuses you and takes your mind off what might be going on somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? All of those things. I managed someone in the Met who had, there's other things that make me angry, but one of the people I managed in the Met had a terminal illness. They knew that. They had made peace with that. Now, we thought it was appropriate to, in the nicest possible way, keep a bit of a closer eye on them. So every 3 months or so, we picked up the phone and said, how are you doing now? We developed a working relationship with their consultant. And everybody understood what was going on, and we were all working together. The shooter wanted to keep shooting. We wanted to keep him and everybody around him safe. And the consultant and his medical team were really happy to take part in that. A compassionate conversation, something that he loved doing, and allowing that to carry on.
Worked well for him, with you and the rest of the team around him.
Yeah.
It could go very wrong. Anyway, I'm going to move on.
Yeah. Sorry.
Social media. We've heard a number of times that the police will want to have a look at your social media. They'll want your passwords. They'll want to have a look into and deep dive into the sort of things you're putting on Facebook. On the flip of that, anybody who has a look on Facebook or the stalking directory, and you start seeing the comments from certain individuals, actually, there's alarm bells ringing. Views on social media, do they really look that deep?
So, the statutory guidance is clear and the law is clear. Certain levels of intrusive surveillance need specific authorizations. Yeah? So what you're really talking about is an open source look at an individual when you're talking from a firearms licensing perspective. Take me, for example, right? I am openly critical of the regime. Of course, I'm openly critical of police responses in some time. I try and balance that out with when I see some good practice, I highlight it and talk to people about that. And there is some great examples out there. But what I put out there is factually correct. I never swear. I never take it beyond into something more personal, the dangerous thing is, from a social media perspective, is when you're, commenting, throwing accusations around. I think people leave themselves unnecessarily vulnerable. And I think they're venting because they've got a genuine axe to grind and they've got nowhere else to grind it. But again, my advice to people would be, if you wouldn't write it on a bit of paper and nail it to your front door, maybe think twice about posting it in open social media.
Well, I always say, if you were not happy to go to court to defend yourself for saying it, don't say it.
Yeah.
It's but clearly there are some individuals who don't compute like that.
No, we're not. And again, like I say, I get it. In actual fact, I had a conversation this week about someone who genuinely feels aggrieved and has got a really good bit of evidence that says he should be feeling aggrieved. But the point I made to him privately, is what are you achieving here? If your FEO happens to read this, that sets your whole relationship from this moment on.
Yeah.
Are you really, is this where you want to put your energy?
Yep. Okay. Other subjects here. Land assessments.
Right.
I'm aware, I think it's Somerset and Avon.
Yeah.
They have pointed some of their firearms certificate holders to a course about land assessments.
Mm-hmm.
Are the police best provided to do them, or probably not, in my opinion? But
No.
this the bit on your farm certificate where you've got a closed certificate, it's on land deemed suitable by the chief of police for that area.
Okay.
Now, go on, Ed. Talk about it.
Talk that one through.
Talk that one through.
So, long story short, it's a nonsense. When I reached the Met, I found out about the practice of land assessments and I went, oh my God, what are we doing this for? Why? There are so many practical issues with a land assessment as a police officer or a member of police staff. And they go, firstly, how am I qualified to do that? I'm not trained to do it. I've never, if I wanted to know if a piece of land was safe, I would take someone that knew along with me, and I would take you and I would say, talk me through this. Okay. So firstly, I'm not trained for it. Secondly, what am I actually saying? Is all of that land safe? And is all of that land safe in every direction? And if all of that land is safe in every direction, how often am I going to check it to make sure that there isn't a new primary school being built on the corner and all the rest of that? Right? And then throwing that on top of it, have I really, someone came to me the other day, his piece of land, 900 acres. It's realistic. Have I really walked every second? Do I want to put my name to that 900 acres? Is there a church in the middle? Footpaths running through? What a nightmare. No. The other thing is, what makes land safe for a 243 that makes it unsafe for a 308?
It's okay. So we the next one on my list is calibers. So you're absolutely right. Now, I would argue that actually standing shooting on sticks on the flat, peaty ground of the Fenlands, which is as flat as a pancake for miles,
Well,
shooting into that dark soil where you're 100 metres away from a deer and you've got 400 metres further beyond that deer before the next field, actually you've got a superb backstop there.
yeah, you've got the
It's
earth, the
best.
entire earth.
Side of a mountain, there's always a possibility the deer could be stood on the skyline. So yeah, it's to me, it's not about the land; it's about the person.
And this is the other thing. Right. Remember we said about that guidance that's actually okay?
Mhm.
Yeah? What does the Home Office guidance says? It says, almost word for word, land is intrinsically not safe or unsafe. It's down to the shooter. So the other point of view, again, and please, I said this when I was in the police, is why would the police even expose themselves to any kind of liability in this area? Why would I don't understand it. No one's ever been able to explain it to me. I think land assessments, well, firstly, I can get a really good sense of you and your abilities to safely assess land by asking you one question. And if I say to you, Nick, you're going to a new parcel of land, talk me through how you're going to approach this. And we can have a conversation, and you're going to say really sensible stuff to me.
Look at a map.
Yeah.
I'd assess the roads. I'd assess the footpaths. I'd look at the neighbouring ground. I'd look at the topography of the ground. Work out safe angles of approach.
Yeah.
Where would be suitable for high seats.
Yeah. Almost already, of course, I'm in my head, I'm mentally checking things off. You said one thing to me one time when I asked you that question, and I thought it was the most brilliant way to start that answer. One of the first things you said to me was, when I first went to that bit of land, I'd leave my gun at home. What a brilliant statement to make in response to that question. The first time I'd leave my gun alone. What does it speak of? It speaks of a measured approach, careful. You know, even if I were out there and that deer popped up and it's the shot of a lifetime, I'm not going to take it because my process hasn't finished and I'm not 100% comfy on that land. So I'm going to remove any temptation of going and taking that shot. What a brilliant answer.
My examples I just gave were from a map. I hadn't even left the house.
Yes. Sorry.
Anyway, calibers then. So there's a number of police forces push really hard that your first firearm, centre-fire firearm, should be a 243.
Mm-hmm.
My personal view is the 243 is a fantastic weapon. It could kill pretty much anything you shoot it at. However, you've got to be a lot more precise with it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be hitting that heart lung area at just the right angle.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a little bit off, you can end up with problems, which a larger caliber would perhaps knock the deer down. It's got enough energy in it that even if it isn't hitting one of the vital organs, it's doing enough damage around it, but the deer is still not going anywhere. So the police are pushing individuals towards the least appropriate firearm for a beginner to be using.
Mm-hmm.
As they were pushing them towards a 308 to start with, they've got a weapon there which has got all the energy that's required. And going back to your land and knowledge of firearms, the 243 is probably going to be 25 to 30% faster than the 308. So different rounds, different things. Varmint round, 243, as opposed to 308, which is definitely a more deer round.
It's, for me, caliber is a mentality thing. The mindset that people seem to slip into at times is smaller caliber equals safer. And that's just not true. You know, you're talking the same force that will push someone to a 243 will sometimes argue like you can't believe that a 243 is the thing, but a 308 is the work of the devil and you know, is for grown-ups only. But if we're thinking about safety, if that's what we're thinking about, which is the police's primary role, right? How is either of those things safer or more dangerous than each other? You know, how far will a 243 round travel if unchecked by an appropriate backstop? Miles. A 308 will do miles as well, and will still harm someone at the end of that. What practical difference does it make? That's not, in my view, that is not the area that we should be spending an awful lot of time on. And forces have got themselves into some really sticky, unnecessary arguments. Like, for example, a month or two ago, I'm dealing with a force who authorized an individual to have a 300 round, let them have it for 2 years and use it safely, and then at point of renewal say, oh no, we don't like that anymore. We've got a policy that says a 300 isn't an appropriate round anymore. We won't authorize that. Okay. And I ended up having a conversation with them along the lines of, okay, understand that. Show me the policy. Oh, I wouldn't ask to see the policy if I were you. Well, I am asking to see the policy. Oh, I'm not sure it's written down. Okay. Who's made the decision then? Oh, I don't know. Okay. And even if you'd made that decision, and even if it was written down somewhere, and even if we knew who'd made it, well, how does that tie in with law and statutory guidance and Home Office guidance? It doesn't.
No.
It's frankly, I've spoken before. This is a tough gig for policing. It really is. Why make it more difficult than it needs to be?
A couple of questions that people have sent in. Just looking at this, a training module for FEOs. We've got that through the Police College.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All FEOs do have to or should.
Should complete fast. I think by around about the end of this year, early part of next year, all FEOs should have done it in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. We've talked about, well, we've touched on the idea of centralised licensing.
Mm.
That sounds as if it's got to be the way forward.
It's got to be the way forward. Not only has it got to be the way forward, but there's a real opportunity at the moment because government is talking an awful lot about police efficiency more generally and talking about reducing the number of forces. It's a real opportunity right now to get it right, turn it into a separate function and centralise it.
Okay. And what's the chances of it happening?
Honestly, I don't think. I think this government has got some lofty goals, but I think so much has happened where they've lost so much public confidence. I can't see them carrying through their plans, if I'm honest.
Well, they're not probably going to be here in a
Yeah.
couple of years' time, are they? With
I
better
think
luck,
there's
so.
a very strong possibility.
Anyway, not to get political.
Yeah, not to.
Since the price increases, why don't we seem to have received a better service?
Because your price increase that you pay goes into, for want of a better description, the price increase you've paid goes into a pot marked Policing PLC, for want of a better word. And the Chief Constable has to make some really difficult decisions about where they're going to put that funding. Now, all of that money. And the really disappointing thing is that if you did a before and after of number of staff, resources available to firearms licensing, you would find that they've either stayed the same or probably been reduced.
Okay. I've got one here that regarding sound moderators. I was with a gun shop yesterday, and they said, "Well, the FEO came and saw us, and they really don't know what they're supposed to be telling us," which is a bit weak, maybe. You know, it's from us as user points of view.
Yeah.
yeah, we get it. It's pretty straightforward. From the RFD's point of view, are things quite as clear, or should it be, or is there just a little bit of a
My view is it's not. It's absolutely not as clear as it could be. There's a lot of here's the frustrating bit. How many years have we been talking about this in one way, shape, or form?
Yeah.
How much time have we had to thrash out the detail of, does a sound mod need to be locked up now? Can it be there? Frankly, they've made life too complicated for themselves. Why? There was an opportunity there to deregulate completely, because now what we're left with is a piecemeal approach that actually doesn't make things clear for people. And the guidance, as you say, isn't coming out to RFDs, so people are trying to fill that vacuum sensibly and not so sensibly at times. But how much easier would it have been just to go, right,
Yeah.
they're a can of metal, leave it where it is. Oh no, if that mod's on a air rifle, it's fine. If that mod's on a section 1, it's not. Yeah, no.
Just as a timestamp for people, this is recorded on the 10th of July. At the end of June, this is 2026. There was a change in licensing regarding sound modulators, so it's all quite new.
Yeah, it is,
Within
and
2 weeks of it happening.
and it's getting felt out. But again, just yet another example of maybe we could have just thought that through a little bit more sensibly.
So, 3 more questions. What's the worst case you've ever had? What's a standout in your mind?
If you get refused or revoked, you have a right of appeal to the local Crown Court. There's a lot more to it, but essentially you go there, the police present their case, you present yours, and the judge makes a decision. In some cases, there's something called public immunity interest. What that means is that the information presents some kind of risk, whether that's a risk to a person, national security, something along those lines. But there is a mechanism whereby you can never find out why someone has taken your certificate away from you. Now, the worst one was someone getting revoked, or rather, getting refused from their application and having no idea whatsoever why that was being refused. The force, quite rightly, they've got the ability to refuse to tell people why that's happened, but that is reserved for those most serious cases. And this wasn't a most serious case. And that person was left in complete confusion as to why this might have been happening with them. We were able to unblock that and gently and professionally remind that force of their obligations and their professional standards that go along with it, and got that person answers. That case is ongoing as it stands right now, but that person could have spent the rest of their lives with no idea whatsoever as to why they weren't able to take part in sporting disciplines.
Okay, so next question. What's the funniest thing you come across? Is there a funny thing? I mean, it's a pretty dull subject. It's
I don't know how you can possibly say that this isn't the sexiest part of sporting disciplines or shooting. No, I don't see how you can say
No, go on then.
I can't say that there's ridiculous ones, but the problem is that they're at times so ridiculous that they would be funny, and I've ended up laughing with people on the phone, but at the same time having to apologize, because although although it's what's happened is ridiculous, the impact that it has on people, and we were talking about this just before we turned the cameras on. The impact that this has on people can be, it may be a bit of an exaggeration, but it's life changing, especially if you've got your employment's linked to it, or it's been a passion of yours for so long, or so on. It's really hard to pick something out. It's ridiculous. Oh, what? And then they did what? They told you that they were going to seize all your guns. Okay. And you and what? And then you said to them, "What legal powers are you going to exercise to do that, officer?" And they went, "I'll get back to you." And 4 hours later, they were still there trying to ring somebody who knew. It's ridiculous rather than funny.
Yeah, but it's ridiculous rather than funny. However, when it's you on the receiving end of it,
oh God, yeah,
your life is falling through the floor.
Oh,
and it's so. I mean, that's pretty much wrapped it up. For anybody listening, what's your website address, Colt?
So the website address is firearmslicensing.net. Firearmslicensing.net.
Yeah.
What we do is we provide memberships, we provide guidance, digital content. We've got, in the firearms licensing world, we've got something for everybody.
Brilliant. Chris, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And
thank you, Nick.
We're going to get out before it gets really, really hot.
Yeah, no, by the way, for us, if you've managed the whole way through this, my hat is off to you. Take best of care.
Thanks, Chris.
Cheers, mate.